Hey everyone, this is Dr. Casey Johnson. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to the Unlock Wellness podcast. I know you're going to love today's episode with Jeff Mayer. Jeff is doing some amazing work, so I'm excited to have him on to share a story with you guys. If you've been loving the Unlock Wellness podcast, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. The Unlock Wellness podcast is now on patreon.com. Patreon is an amazing site that allows you to support your favorite podcasts. You can learn more by going to patreon.com/Dr. Casey Johnson. There are even fun incentives for supporting, like shirts and stickers, so be sure to check it out. Also, be sure to follow me on social media to keep up with the latest podcast episodes. The best way to connect with me is on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. My username across the board is at Dr. Casey Johnson. That's DrKaseyJohnson. You can also check out my website at drcaseyjohnson.com. It has all of the past podcast episodes and more information about each guest under the Listen tab. While you're on my site, also be sure to check out the Shop tab, where you can check out my first book of my Healthy Children's Book series and learn about the Unlock Wellness Project, which applies a wellness bag to a child in need for each book purchased. Thank you again for listening. I hope this episode leaves you feeling inspired to start making positive changes to your health. Now it's time for today's episode. I hope you love my conversation with Jeff Mayer. Welcome to the Unlock Wellness podcast. I'm Dr. Casey and excited for today's guest. I'm here with Jeff Mayer. And Jeff has completely transformed his life with a plant-based diet. He is now an Ultrarunner and a cyclist, and he's just doing some really positive work. So I'm extremely excited to have him on to share a story with you guys. So Jeff, thank you so much for taking time to come on. I'm excited to have you.
Well, thank you, Casey. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I'm so passionate, I think, about what I'm doing now that I just want to share it with everybody. So, it's definitely something that's been contagious with me, and I really never thought I would feel this way. But it's going. I just really enjoyed my the experience of it. So this far. So
that's awesome. Yeah, and just before we obviously get into the awesome stuff that you're doing right now, why don't you walk everybody through your backstory a bit? So, first off, where you're from and, what your health and wellness looked like at an early age. So just everybody understand how that's progressed over time.
Okay. Yeah, originally I'm from Connecticut, but I've been in Florida, different parts of Florida here for a number of years, pretty much all my adult life. And just to give a little bit of a backstory, I basically I was kind of one of those people, I guess. I was a little active as a child. I played some soccer and some sports, but I wasn't, what you consider, I guess, someone that was really athletic. And for a number of years, I was I think I was one of those people that I would go to. I knew I had to go to the gym just to try to keep the weight off, but I would go maybe once a week.
Yeah.
And I really didn't know what I was doing. So I was just really casual about the whole thing. I was, and I just kind of, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was eating the right thing, and I guess eventually it kind of caught up with me. At one point, one of the things that happened to me, it seemed like it was really a kind of a fluke. I ended up getting a pinched nerve, and to be honest, it happened the kind of the most unusual way, I guess, possible. It really wasn't anything special. I just one day I'd woken up I'd slept the wrong way, and when I woke up, I was in the excruciating pain. And from that point on, it took about a month to a month and a half, really, I think, to kind of work my way through to figure out what was going on. I went to a number of different specialists. I had kind of pain radiating all throughout my body, and I really I just didn't know what to do. Eventually, the pain started subsiding, and I'd gone to, I think, a chiropractor, and he had done some work on me. And basically, after a little bit of time, the pain started going away. But it was one of those experiences, I think, which was a kind of a changing point in my life, where I felt really, as I was younger, I always felt like I was not indestructible, but I kind of felt that, whatever I had any kind of issue, I could always recover from it. But when I had this happen to me, it really felt me feel, I definitely felt mortal. I felt like, things can happen. I can,
Right.
have issues. I'm not this young guy anymore that, at that point, I think I was 43 at that point. And when that happened to me, I was kind of nervous and I was scared to actually do any kind of exercise or workouts at all at that point for a better part of a year. And that's kind of the point where I started gaining weight. And I think it was just a slow process. I really wasn't, the funny thing about it, I wasn't really eating anything different. I guess I was just a lot less active than maybe I was a bit more active than I thought it was.
Right. And that kind of weight gain, it creeps up so slow that, a lot of people just don't notice it until it's creeped up enough to where you look in the mirror and then you see it, right? It's like it's been happening, but you just don't notice it, right? And I'm sure like the workout, it was just slowing down that creep, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it was just a matter too, I think, where I was, it was happening very slowly. And I didn't notice it. I was going about my merry way. And then I could really see at one point, someone told me like, what's going on with you? I mean, I'm a relatively skinny guy to begin with, but you could really see it. I had that, that dad bod thing going on. I hate to say it, but it was really, I had a gut. I had like, a serious amount of weight I thought that was affecting me. And it wasn't so much the weight was affecting me, but then I realized other things started happening to me. When I had a lot of trouble actually. When I would go to sleep and I'd wake up, I was in a lot of pain at that point. I had a lot of joint pain. So I'd wake up and every part of my body was aching. I just didn't know what was going on. I thought, well, I guess it's the weight. Maybe it's just because I'm getting to the point where I'm hitting that middle age. I'm just, that's just what happens, I guess. Maybe there's nothing I can do about it. Maybe that's just what happens to everybody. I really didn't have any idea at that point. And another thing that I noticed was my energy level was low. And I felt like by the end of, by 3:00 in the afternoon, I just had no energy whatsoever. And I wasn't even drinking any, coffee or caffeine. I really didn't have like a caffeine crash. I guess a lot of people have like, toward the end of the afternoon.
Right.
It was just, a point where, I didn't have any energy. And I guess those things in combination, it just kind of, it got to the point where I was just, I have to do something. I don't know what to do. I need to start looking into, changing something. I don't know what to do at this point, but I need to change. So around that time, my wife heard of, she found out about it was one of those obstacle course races, like a mud run. And she was like, I'm going to do this thing. I was like, you're going to do it. I got to do this thing. I got to try this. This is something that I want to try too. I mean, I wasn't, active at that point, but I was like, you know what? I need to do something. I need to take a leap of faith. I need to start exercising again. So I did. I started, working out again. And, at that point, I started to lose a couple pounds, but I just felt like it's not happening. I'm feeling a bit better, but, I still had, issues with one of the things I had suffered with actually for a number of years was allergies. And, I kind of had asthma as a child, and a couple of times I had to go into the hospital. I was, I just couldn't breathe. I had to, go on medication just to kind of clear my lungs. And, I would get sick, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 times a year. And I was, so all these things in combination were, kind of wearing at me. So when I started working out, when I started training for this thing, then I started to do the research. Then I started to look around online and find out, well, is it what I'm eating? I'm eating like turkey sandwiches every day. And I'm not eating red meat even at that point. I'm just kind of eating like fish, chicken, turkey sandwiches. I wasn't really able to cook much myself. I was like my cooking repertoire was basically pasta, and maybe I could make a salad, but I didn't know I didn't really know how to make a good salad. But that was the extent of what I knew how to cook. And my wife did most of the cooking at that point. So I started researching online. I started looking at, different things. I heard somebody talk about something called an ultra marathon. I remember looking and I saw it was a book of, was one of the books I saw was from Dean Karnassus.
Yep.
And, I read that he was the ultra marathon man. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's something crazy, but, I want to read about that. I want to find out more about it. And oddly enough, I found, the book Finding Ultra, Rich Roll's book.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this sounds good. This is ultra marathons. I want to read more about that. And, and then I started reading. I'm like, this is not really about ultra marathons. This is about a guy that was middle-aged that changed his life. That for those that don't know that, don't that book or know Rich Roll, he was a lawyer, and he used to be an athlete. I guess he was a swimmer at one point in college. And I think one day he was walking up his stairs at his house, and he was winded, and he was only in his early 40s at that point, and he really was like, what is going on with me? I think he had gained like around 50 pounds, and he was just so out of breath climbing up his stairs that he was like, this is one of those moments that he, in his life that he had to, he was influenced to make a change. So I started, when I read about that in his book, and I started hearing about he started eating a plant-based diet, and then he started doing these, crazy races, which were, there were ultra marathons, but they were triathlons.
Right. Like like Ironman.
Ironman, right. Distance triathlons. And he did, at one point, I think he did 5 in a row,
yep.
which is amazing. So, that thrilled me. And I realized, well, if this guy can do something, I should at least be able to get off my butt and start really making things happen. I mean, I should be able to go beyond. I mean, I don't want to necessarily get to his level, but at least I can, improve something about my life. So I read through his book, and then I found out about Forks Over Knives, and I watched that on Netflix, and I started really, doing a deep dive. I started reading everything I could find about a plant-based diet. And, I was one of those people, I guess, that was, years ago, I had friends that were vegan. I was like, you guys are a little bit, too far out there for me. It's not something that I would be interested in doing. But the whole idea of the whole like plant-based aspect of it was attractive to me. It didn't really have the stigma of veganism, initially. So, I was like, I'm going to look into this, and so after doing like weeks and weeks of different research, reading different books, looking online, I started joining some Facebook groups, and I started, going on there, lurking around just to see what people were saying about it. So eventually I remember getting to the point where I was on vacation with my wife. We had stopped at one of the not the toll booths, but the service stations. And, I was hungry. It was about lunchtime, and I was like, in my head, I was like, I need to find like a salad or something to eat, because this is the point where I'm going to change my diet. I'm going to start to change now, and
so your first like official meal as a vegan was from the gas station.
Right. Basically. Yeah, exactly. I was like, hilarious. This is the time to do it.
Well, you know what? I love that, because people, it's easy for people to have, an excuse, whether it's, it's too hard, I'm on the road a lot, or I travel a lot, but you can find options at basically anywhere, especially now.
No, it's a lot easier, now than it used to be. I kid around with people. I always tell people this, that I carry a can of chickpeas around with me in my car, just in case I have to stop someplace where there's just a salad or something. But anyway, awesome. It was, so I told her, and, right before I even told her that, I thought to myself, look, at that point I was 44, and I was, I said, look, I've lived my entire life to this point eating a certain way. And I thought I was eating healthy, and I wasn't eating red meat at that point. So what's the harm in trying something else, something different now? If it doesn't work, I can go back to what I was doing before and try something else.
Right.
We should at least give this a try at this point. So I said to her, okay, she's like, I said to her, there's not much I can eat here. And she's like, just eat that turkey sandwich. I'm like, okay, I'm going to eat this, but I'm telling you right now, I made this decision to do this, and this is going to be the last turkey sandwich I ever eat in my life. And she was like, what are you talking about? And I said to her, look, I've done some research, and I'm going to do this plant-based thing. And she's like, what do you mean? Like vegetarian? Like you're going to become a vegetarian, or you're vegan or something? I was like, yeah. And the funny thing about it was, like 4 years ago before this. My wife was like a vegetarian for maybe like a 6-month period, but it didn't stick with her at that point. She wasn't able to kind of make it work. Actually now she is like, full on pretty much a vegan, but at that point she couldn't make it stick. And what she told me is what everybody else hears. Where are you going to get your protein?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I knew you were going to ask me that. And I've got plenty of answers for you that I probably won't bore everybody else with right now. But I said, for the most part, it's going to be beans. But and she's like, you've never eaten like a bean in your life. I said, that is true. Because that was 100% true at the time. I had tried like black beans, I think one time, and I never ate it again.
Really?
Up until, I made the transition.
That's cool though. I mean, yeah, no, it's interesting. So, I mean, did you have to like season everything a little bit more until you got used to it, until you were able to like change your palate?
Yeah, I started with a lot of the kind of analog, foods a little bit. I started with some of the, the veggie burgers.
Yeah.
And some of the fake meats. I started with those for like the first week or so. And so those were my transition foods. But I did have experience where I went into like a grocery store, and I've talked about this a little bit before, but basically when I went into the store, I kind of walked to the frozen aisles because at that point I really didn't know how to cook anything or create any dishes. So I was like, I just have to buy something frozen right now because I don't know what to do. But I knew what to do because I read a bunch of recipes and I read everything online and I read these books, but I wasn't sinking in to the point yet where I was comfortable. And I kind of suffered with something I call like recipe paralysis, where I just started reading too many recipe books. And I was like, this takes way too much time and I don't have these ingredients.
Right. It's like when you follow like those Instagram accounts that post like the beautiful pictures of vegan meals. And I mean, they're awesome. And I'm kind of jealous of those, but at the same time, like, it's, especially like most of like my meals, they're kind of boring a lot of the times, like just a lot of veggies, rice or quinoa and beans and like things like that. But man, it doesn't have to be complicated, which I'm sure it's what you're about to say, right? That it can be extremely basic, but still taste awesome and obviously fills you up. Like it's crazy how full you stay when you really eat like this and eat enough.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what I was telling you. That was going to tell you. Yes, I'm happy right now with a bowl of quinoa, some chickpeas. I throw in a little maybe apple cider vinegar and maybe some broccoli in there.
Yeah,
and I could eat that probably every day and not be concerned about it. I mean, I would spice it up maybe with some spices, but my taste buds have changed, a night and day comparison.
Oh yeah,
which I think for people that are starting out new, you got to give your body a little bit of time to adjust, not just in the increases in fiber, but also your taste buds, your biome, your gut biome, I guess people say, will change, and your body will start craving these other foods. And for me, this has become more of a. I'm amazed of the different vegetables and the different flavors. I thought it was going to be more of a subtractive kind of diet, but it's been more of an additive diet where I'm able to try all these different recipes, different combinations of things, which.
Right. And I'm sure like you probably feel even more creative now. And obviously you do have more freedom because you can kind of eat when you're hungry and you don't have to worry about it affecting your health in a negative way or gaining a lot of weight because your body knows what to do with it. But yeah, no, and like for myself, I noticed I was being more creative with the different things that I was mixing together, which I'm sure you did too, especially since you said that cooking wasn't really your thing, right?
Oh no, and my wife right now, she actually she eats my food now, and she's like, sometimes she'll tell me, well, the way you made it was better than the way that I did. So I've come up with, and I think this is good for people starting out. I have my go-to dishes, probably like half a dozen go-to dishes that I make, and then I just kind of wax on those a bit. I just kind of vary a little bit what I add to them, different spices, different beans. And that's another thing, like with the bean scenario, I didn't know really about chickpeas before. I didn't know about pinto beans. I just sound like a fool here, but I didn't know the different varieties of beans. I never heard of lentils before.
Right. Or,
So I mean,
white beans and like there really are.
they do
It's
taste
crazy.
different. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. They do taste different. So when I started eating this way, initially I wasn't getting enough calories for the first week. So I felt really fatigued, and I'm like, what did I do? What did I get myself into? So like you said, I wasn't just getting enough food in.
Hmm.
So I had to. It took me a little bit just to kind of figure out that I needed to eat more, and then when I got that figured out, it didn't take me very long, and then the good things started happening. I don't know, slowly but surely, the weight started dropping off, pound by pound by pound, and I started feeling actually kind of more energetic, and it encouraged me to actually start increasing my number of workouts and also like the length of my workouts. And I felt like I not just more energetic, but I felt like I was able to actually operate on less sleep,
Hmm.
which is a weird, funny thing.
Right.
And oddly enough, the pains that I was having before, all the joint pain, and I can't mark a specific date, but the pain started going away.
It's awesome.
I mean, maybe some of that has to do with my increase in physical activity, but I think that for one thing, like cutting out dairy, I think that had a lot to do with it, because I think the dairy also affected my immune system and my allergy, because I started feeling better. I wasn't having, my allergies weren't bothering me as much as they used to. And I wasn't getting sick as much as I used to. And I think, for instance, like last year, I was sick maybe one time the entire year, when, before I'd made this transition, like I said, 5, 6 times a year I was sick.
Right. Yeah. No, it's just, I love that. Did you notice you had, as you progressed along, increased body awareness? I noticed, like, just for example, for myself, I noticed that if I have busier weeks where maybe like eating more things, but skipping out on, this sounds kind of funny, right? Because, as vegans, people are like, well, if you skip out on vegetables, what are you eating? But obviously there's a lot of other things you can eat. I noticed that if I'm not getting the quantity of actual vegetables into my meals as I really need to be, and just like overloading with vegetables, that I get more tired. But if I eat a lot of vegetables with each meal, or like in my night with a lot of vegetables, I mean, I don't have to drink as much caffeine, if any. Just like you said about the sleep, I wake up so much more energetic. But I've noticed that after that, I've obviously done all of this. But like, have you noticed that, just that type of body awareness now, that you really know what health feels like?
Yeah, that is a funny thing you mentioned that. And I'm not saying that I never feel like I'm, like depleted, or, I feel like maybe I'm getting sick. But when I feel like I'm getting sick, if I eat like a giant bowl, I'm not kidding, if I eat like a giant bowl of salad, something about that will actually, I'm able to kind of recharge. It feels like my immune system, and I can, like, my body's like craving that I'm going to need that salad. And then when I do eat it, it really, usually like the next day, I'm feeling better. It,
Right.
it's, it's uncanny, really. Like sometimes, like you said, yeah, it's being more in tune with my body. And even when I was not, I think in my highest weight, I was between 195 and 200. And like I said, I'm a skinny guy, but I think my current weight now is about 155, and I don't, at this point right now, my weight goes up 1, 2 pounds, but it doesn't go beyond that.
Yeah.
Even when I feel like I'm eating more and more,
Right.
certain times it still stays around that. And even when I wasn't, like I said, when I wasn't overweight, when I was around, I mean, I shouldn't say overweight, but when I was just slightly overweight, I was around 170, I was around 165, 175. And when I was at that weight, I could never get below that weight, no matter what I tried. But I think I just got to a point where I come in tune with what my body needs. And it's easier to kind of work with that, to kind of understand what kind of foods my body is needing at a certain point. So, and what volume of food that I take in.
Right. No, I love that. Just the stability of it. And that's the cool thing with when somebody starts eating plant-based, like your body will get to the place it needs to be. And then like you said, and I've heard this so many times and I've seen it with myself, like once your weight reaches that stable place on this way of eating, it's really amazing how stable it stays. Like you were saying, I can go on a vacation and come back and I know that my weight's going to be exactly the same. When in the past, most people can't say that, right? Because you go on vacation, you're eating a bunch and I eat a bunch too, but I just eat a bunch of stuff that is serving me. And even when I do have a little bit of processed stuff that is obviously vegan, and obviously those things have a lot of oil and things like that and processed, even when that happens, I can still stay in that stable place, which I'm sure you've noticed the same thing with that too.
Yeah, it is. It is funny. I mean, I know, but the other aspect of it, the flip side, if I eat something that's not so great for me, I kind of feel it more.
Oh,
so,
yeah. Yeah.
So I know, like, if I had something that was, that wasn't great for me, that was a processed thing that had maybe a little bit more oil than I wanted to. As far as the oil aspect of things, I kind of go on this, I try to not use oil when I'm at home, but when I go out, it's very difficult to eat at places at a restaurant I don't know what they're putting in altogether.
Right.
And I kind of accept it to the point now where sometimes there's oil that's being used. So I know that that oil is, being used on the food. So I know at home, most of the time I'm not going to add any oil, but when I'm out, there's certainly that's a possibility, but
yeah,
it's, and I'm kind of also I do kind of believe in kind of healthy fats myself, just based on the way my body has reacted, not regarding oil, but as far as, avocado, and nuts, I do take in those things myself. When I had my cholesterol checked initially, before I made the switch over, it wasn't high really to begin with, but when I did, I think it was a year and a half later when I had it checked again, it still had dropped like 60 points.
Wow. That's cool though.
It's just, I was like, what? I didn't even realize what the effect it would have on me. It was a funny thing too. Everybody talks about B12. When I had my, that you need B12 as a vegan or a plant-based diet, which is true. But when I had my B12 check personally, it was higher than what I would typically need.
That is super interesting. And I want to throw in a side note to that as well. If you're listening and you aren't plant-based and you don't take a supplement, like, I mean, personally, and honestly, what I've seen through the research as well, even if you're not vegan, you should still take a B12 supplement just because the quality is not there. And everything is so overly sterilized now to that. And that's what's really, destroying that bacteria that, creates the B12. But yeah, no, I mean, anybody really should be taking a B12 supplement, not just vegans. And to your example, it was higher than what it was. So I think that's.
Yeah, I do take, I still take the B12. I'm trying to, I try to get it down to kind of like what the level should be at this point. So
gotcha.
I'm not taking it. I think I was taking it every day, and I think I take it like 3 times a week now instead. So
gotcha. Yeah. Hey, and I want to hear how you got into ultra running. I know you're still talking about the energy really started increasing. Obviously, you had to get some of that energy out. And Rich Roll was a big motivator for you with that. So how did that come into play? And what was your first ultra that you did?
Okay. Well, sure. Basically, when I had done that first obstacle course race I was talking about earlier, and I survived that somehow. And, and I ended up doing a few more of those. But I realized as I was getting older that those types of events are kind of risky from an injury perspective. Unfortunately, I saw somebody fall off one of those cargo nets.
Oh.
And I thought to myself, I don't want that to be me at some point.
Right.
And, I've got a family, and I really enjoyed the running component of it more than everything else. So I found out about a race that was a trail race, and something attracted to me, the idea of running on the trail. Some of the obstacle course races I was doing were on trail. So I was like, let me do an actual trail race. So there's a state park not too far from where I live. And, they put on a race there every year. And so I decided to sign up for a half marathon trail race.
That's a big commitment, especially at that point, right?
That is because at that point, the longest run I'd ever done, I think, was 6 miles before that, which was a 10K. So, I was like, well, I really want to do this. I think they did have a shorter distance, but I was like, I just want to try, see if I can do the half marathon. And I didn't know anything about really what I was doing at that point. In fact, my running form was pretty horrible as well. Before I learned about, foot strike and landing on your forefoot or midfoot, instead of your heel. So I didn't know anything about it at the time. But I started training for that, and I ended up doing the race. Unfortunately, I think I'd injured my knee the last 2 miles of the race. I limped in basically the last 2 miles of that race. But I was, it didn't, at that point, it didn't persuade me to stop doing trail races. I thought, look, I guess I need to work on my knee. I need to figure out what's going on. Maybe it was too many stage diving, too much stage diving from my youth. But I started, running more. Eventually my knee was okay. And I ended up joining, there's a local kind of trail group. We call ourselves the Down to Run tribe that I joined up with. And I started meeting these people there that were just amazing. They all had stories. They all had backstories. They were all people that, overcome all these, crazy things in their life. And so they were great people to be around. And I started training with them. And they were telling me, oh, you should do this race, or you should try this other race. We're going to do this race in Tampa. Do you want to try that? So they were really motivational. And some of the people were, much faster than I was. Other people were slower, but everybody worked together to kind of motivate each other. And
that's a strong community, the Ultrarunner community. It is. I've had a bunch on, and it's really cool. And I love that ultra running being used as a therapy. And I think that's why you get so many cool stories when you meet people who are ultra runners, because you have to have a special, strong mindset to even attempt to do that.
Yeah, and that's why I think some of the people that were, part of this group or part of this tribe were really inspirational for me. And so, I ended up, looking to do longer distances. And my next challenge was to do. I actually skipped. My next challenge was to do then a 50K. 31, whatever, 31.2, I guess it is. And I had never done a marathon. And so I was going to go straight to the 50K, distance at that point. But, these guys were so motivational. They were like, you can do it. You can train for this. So, I did train. And I actually decided to do a relay race on the road before the trail race. I had some other friends that wanted to do that. And I ended up trying to do, I ended up running, like I was supposed to run one leg of the race. I ended up running all the legs of the race. There was 4 legs of the race.
How did that happen? Did they back out?
No, I just was an idiot. I said, look, I'm just going to go on. I'm going to try to finish this myself. They kept running, like their leg. They did their leg.
I got you.
And that was probably the dumbest thing I ever done because I ended up injuring myself again, and that was, I think, 2 weeks before the ultra marathon. So by some miracle, I healed, and I was able to start that race. And it was one of the hardest things I think I ever faced at that point. It was very hot. I was getting dehydrated. I remember cramping during the race. In fact, at one point, my leg cramped up so badly that I was kind of running, and it cramped up, and I just fell over like a domino. But I saw somebody was coming behind me, and I just picked myself up, and I told the guy, like, you didn't see anything, did you? He's like, no. Keep going. But I kind of used that as a way to, I just started moving forward, and I was just like, I need to make it to this tree. I need to make it to this aid station. I need to make it around this corner. So I just kept telling myself, make it to this next point, make it to the next segment of the race. And that got me through to the and the people that were working the race were all runners, all ultra runners. So they were very motivational to me as well. And I think there's a difference when you run on the road, like a road, a typical marathon or something. It's usually volunteers that are, maybe Boy Scouts or, just, church members or just volunteers.
Right.
They're great people,
Right.
but they don't have experience running. So these people at the ultra marathon, they were all runners. They were all, they gave me these ideas like, oh, just take some salt in or do this, put this ice on your back. You're going to feel better. So they got me through it. And I got to the end of the race. I remember my wife had called me because she didn't know when I was going to finish. She was like, just, call me when you're getting close. So I ended up calling her on my cell phone. And when I got to the end of the race, my son was waiting with the medal. And so it was just a fantastic experience. And he put the medal around me. I was just like, oh, this is awesome. It was hard, but I finished the race, and it was just like an amazing experience.
What do you think you learned the most about yourself through that race?
That for once in my life that I'm an athlete, which I never felt before. I'm athletic. I'm doing something that to me, personally is something I never thought I would do ever in my life.
Yeah.
To run not just a marathon, but an ultra marathon.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome.
it was like the tipping point really for me that once I completed that I knew I could go beyond that distance at some point. But I felt like at that point, in a way, my body had already made the transformations. And I wasn't, at the weight I wanted to be at that point, but I was pretty close. But I knew at that point my life or my psyche really had transformed to the point where I went from somebody that was sitting on a couch or maybe that did a little bit of exercise to somebody that was able to finish this race. And I could identify, I guess, like I said, I could identify myself as an athlete. And I wanted to take that forward. I wanted to pay that forward. I wanted to work with other people to show them that you could change your life. And I remember getting back to my office, and first thing I did, I think I remember, like, it was not the first thing, but I remember a couple of weeks later, I told, I was talking to my boss and a couple other people, someone in HR. I was like, let's do a race. Let's do a 5K. I want to be a part of it. And we organized a race for the people at my office. And I remember I was like, I'm going to host this training run, and we'll just run at the local park. Let's just do a little bit of running. So people started coming to some of those events that I was hosting. And by the time we were ready for the race, we had basically, I think, 30 people that had signed up that were going to do the race.
That's awesome.
So I just felt like I was kind of paying it forward a little bit. And that I was at the point now where they considered, I wasn't anybody. I was just a guy that did this ultra marathon, but to these people at my office, I was the crazy guy. I was the guy that was the runner. They identified me as the skinny runner guy.
Right. Which I'm sure you loved though.
But it was a great, I just felt like I'm doing something. I'm a part of this.
Right.
And maybe if I can influence anybody, or I can, get them to make some changes in their life, subtle changes, then maybe they'll feel better too. Or they'll be able to do a 5K, or even if they're walking the 5K, they're going to be able to make some changes slowly, and who knows what that will turn into for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And how many races have you done so far? Because you also do cycling races too, right?
Yeah, I did cycling. I haven't done like a triathlon at this point, but I've done some cycling events, and I cycle I cycle when I'm injured from running, but I try to cycle as well just to get an extra kind of like cross training in.
Gotcha.
I do a lot of kind of body weight type workout and, plank. So we have a funny thing we do at my running tribe. We try to do a plank challenge. So we try to get into, 2-3 minutes of planks, and just to see what people can do. But it's fun. But I'm trying to round out my workouts a bit more now to get some other exercises in. Just as I'm getting older, I'm realizing that I need to add some extra, training, cross training into my workouts.
Just overall balance, and that way you can prevent injury as much as possible. I love that, Jeff, and I love how you're using your experience, just like you said before, just to pay it forward and reach as many people as you can, and just let them know that it is possible. Like you can go from that, couch potato, right? To really pushing yourself further than what you really expect or really what you, thought that you could do. So, I love that. And, Jeff, is there anything that you're working on in the future that you just want to put out there and share with people, or just continue to push yourself personally and live by example and just continue to inspire other people?
Yeah, I just, I want to be a little bit more active in what I'm doing. And I think I'm looking to kind of expand my reach a little bit more and maybe, talk, just to maybe put it out there a bit more at this point. So I'm looking at ways of doing that. But I mean, just to be on your show, that's, for me, that's, that's the type of thing that I would like to do more so. And I was at a local, recently I was at one of the local nutrition stores. Mm-hmm. And I went to, they had an actual plant-based event, and I was talking with one of the people that organizes the event. And I talked a little bit about my story there as well. But I don't think that I'm not, I think I'm pretty much an average guy, but I think, certainly anybody that considers themselves average certainly can make changes in their life, and it can really impact them long term. I have a son that's just turning 12 now. And, for me, it's important to kind of live my life this way, to be there for him in the future. So that's important to me. And, right now I'm, I don't know, like I said, I'll have to see what I get into. I like to get more involved in the cooking aspect of things, but also the nutrition side. So I'm looking at right now as well. But I'm training right now. I just pushed the button on it. I'm training right now for my first 100-mile race.
That's exciting. When is that?
That's in January.
Very cool.
But I've dabbled at 100K distance and 50-mile distance, but I want to step it up a bit more and go with the 100 at this point. So that's going to be a whole nother world of hurt. But I think it's going to be a lot of heavy on the mental side of things. And that's just one quick thing I want to say about that is that for me too, people talk, I think, a lot about meditation. And I know Rich Roll's a big component. He's a big, he's heavily interested in that, especially his wife, Julie.
Right.
But for me, running is meditative, because typically when I run, I don't use any type of music. So I think running on the trail, for instance, for me is like a meditative thing, because I feel like I'm connecting more with nature, and I think that's, being a busy kind of guy, I think having that outlet, being able to run outside with nature has really helped me as far as having that outlet from that regard.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's another thing that I've heard a lot from runners in general, whether it be ultra runner or not, just that it is a form of meditation, because you're able to really clear your mind, and just so many thoughts come to you. And it's a very cool experience. And I love that. And I know you're 100% right that is a meditative process. And that's really cool. And Jeff, and I'm excited to hear how that 100 miler goes. That's going to be amazing. And I'm sure you'll be posting all about that as it gets closer as well. What is the best way for people to follow you on social media? That way they can keep up with everything that you're doing as you start to go and do more speaking, and also obviously keep up with your training as well.
Yeah, actually, I kind of call myself the plant slayer.
Love it.
Is my little name that I used. You can find me on Instagram as Plant Slayer, PLANT. I spell it SLAYR. So I
got it.
Drop the E there. And I'm also on Facebook with my actual name, Jeff Mayer. So you can hit me up on there as well. But I just love hearing other people with their own stories, and it's been motivational for me to hear other people that have gone through transformation. So I think that's important. Whatever weight that you had, for instance, whatever place you are in life or whatever weight you are, that there's always a possibility, and even how old you are as well. You certainly can make a change in your life. You don't, especially myself is somebody that's, approaching, I'll be turning 49 this December. I kind of feel like I don't know. I feel like a kid. I feel like I'm in my 30s. I think I feel better than I did in my 30s, oddly enough. So I just want to put that out there, I guess, for people that wherever you are in life, you can certainly make changes, and they can be impactful changes that really set a course for the direction of the rest of your life.
Right. Because most people about to turn 50, they're not planning and they're training for a 100-mile race, right? But they could be if they wanted
They
to.
could be.
And that's the
They
point.
could be. I know a guy that's in his late 60s that's running at Badwater this year, which is a
Awesome.
130-mile race. So they're out there. They're out there.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And yeah, and you kind of, I mean, even if you have to kind of repeat what you just said, but for a closing question, Jeff, if you just had one piece of advice for the audience, maybe it's something that's been your biggest takeaway through your wellness journey so far, but if you just had one piece of advice to give, what would it be?
One thing is don't give up easy. Like I said before, if you've lived a certain, percentage of your life a certain way, then there's no harm in you trying to make a change. You can try to make that change and give it a little bit of time to stick, work at it a little bit, because it's you owe it to yourself and your family to try to make that change. No matter whatever that change is, if it's a slow change, if you decide to go cold turkey, pun intended, like I did, you owe it to yourself to really, make that change, or at least try. And don't, one last thing about that is, and don't let the naysayers tell you differently. If you've done the research like I've done, and there's people out there, don't look at me, look at the athletes that are out there that have made changes. If they're able to do it, then anybody else can. I mean, there are plenty of people out there right now, from tennis players to NFL players to NBA athletes to ultrarunners, that have done amazing things. So, it's anybody can make this type of change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's perfect, Jeff. And hey, Jeff, thank you so much for taking time to come on. I loved having you. I'm just excited to see all of the positive work you do, and obviously all of the amazing things you do with your ultra running. So just thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on the podcast.
Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you loved my conversation with Jeff. He's doing so much positive work, so be sure to give him a follow on social media to keep up with everything that he's been working on. You can find his social media links that we talked about in the episode in the show notes, but you can also find them on my website as well at drcaseyjohnson.com. That's drkaseyjohnson.com. Click on the Listen tab. Then from there, you'll be able to see all of the past guests that have come on the Unlock Wellness podcast, read a little bit about each guest, and be able to click on their social media links, websites, all of that. So all of Jeff's information can be found on my site as well. If you guys loved today's episode with Jeff, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. Also, be sure to check out patreon.com/Dr. Casey Johnson to learn more about how you can support the Unlock Wellness podcast. Thank you guys so much again for tuning into today's episode. I hope you loved it. I hope it inspires you. And most importantly, I hope you take action.